Welcome to the Private Lenders Podcast with your hosts from Hard Money Bankers, Jason Balin and Chris Haddon. This podcast is sponsored by hardmoneymastermind.com.
Hey everyone, Private Lenders Podcast, Chris and Jason here. Real quick, if you haven't done so already, go check out hardmoneymastermind.com. Join the community with us and 2,600 other private lenders. We hope to see you in there. All right, we're talking about broker business today, and here's why. Things have been getting a little shaky with the lending markets. You might have heard a recent podcast we did about the DSCR fraud that led to a real shakeup in that niche in terms of lowering LTVs, pulling out of certain areas. Like there's a lot of that going on with the institutional capital in our space. When things like this happen, you're going to see an increase in broker business. Why? Because their normal sources of where they would place deals might not be doing the same stuff. They might not be lending. They might not be in that area. They might not be doing that property type. The institutional money getting shaken up will push more deals from brokers to private lenders, and we're going to break that down today.
Yeah, and it's definitely a good thing. And I talk to a lot of members of the Mastermind group regularly, and they're always asking, hey, do you work with brokers? Like, should I be working with brokers? How do I find brokers? How do I structure my deals with them? So let's go through some of those things. So we kind of naturally started working with brokers when we started in 2007, 2008. For one way or the other, we both came from, the mortgage side and the residential real estate side. And, brokers were, a huge play. We knew mortgage brokers. Now, that's not to say that that's where any of our loans came from by knowing a few folks, but we recognized that working with brokers and them bringing us opportunities was a good thing. Now, keep in mind, in the commercial space, most all commercial loans go through brokers. In the residential space, not as much. I'm not saying it's not existing. We get loans from brokers. We just closed on one Friday, right? We're recording this on a Monday, $325,000 loan that we got from a broker. So it does happen a lot kind of as well. Typically, a lot of sophisticated real estate investors might not want to go to a broker first if they already know lenders, hard money lenders, private lenders, institutional backed lenders, right? Because the broker is going to have to make money. So they're going to, upcharge them a point, 2 points, maybe even more to do so. But, here's some of the places that we have found brokers. Now, I will say when we started, a lot of it was offline stuff. We did a lot of office visits to brokers' offices. We'd go there. We had some background and some experience with dealing with brokers back in the day. And in essence, it was like, hey, I'm a private lender. I lend out my own money. I am local. These are the types of projects that we work on. Do you have any deals that you need? That's how the broker world worked back in the day, right? The brokers and the lenders would meet. They'd meet in their offices and they'd figure out what files they're working on and which ones would be a good suit for that particular lending institution. So we did a lot of offline stuff from them. And over the years, we do a lot of website marketing. So just like a borrower would go to our website to find us, brokers would as well. Brokers are going to Google hard money lenders, private lenders, Columbia, Maryland, Washington, D.C., things like that. So make sure you have a clear kind of definitive spot on your website so brokers know that you take broker business, that they're protected, they can collect money and you work with them. So those are the kind of the things that we started with, which worked. And organically, again, when you build your email list, we talk about building email lists all the time and collecting contact information. So we have a lot of mortgage brokers on our list, just like we have a lot of borrowers. And then, through the years, a lot of brokers go to local meetup groups. A lot of brokers are also real estate investors themselves. Maybe they're real estate agents. They played multiple hats. So over the years, we've created relationships with mortgage brokers. And I would say that right now, if you're just starting out and you want to be proactive, besides doing those things, just Google, Google some, call them, get them on the phone. They're dying to find lenders that can help them with their deal. I mean, most brokers notoriously, always have files that they're working on, and they're always looking for a home for some of their files. So you might, as an outsider, be like, well, why would anyone use a broker? Or why wouldn't the broker just go to Kiavi? Why would they go to me? There's lots of reasons. You're local, you're fast, you're easy to work with. And some brokers are lazy and they don't want to put in heavy lifting. If you're proactive and you're getting them on the phone and talking to them, they'll just send you their files.
You know, I was talking to a broker last week. Remember, I was driving in the car. It's somebody I had not connected with before, but he reached out because we do a good amount of marketing specifically for small balance commercial loans. This broker is on that list. So he hit me up. We played some phone tag and then we got to chat for a little while. And it was that kind of situation where he had 3 or 4 things on his desk that he was trying to figure out how to place them. And he had some lender, I don't know the name of a lender, but somebody backed out on him last minute, which happens all the time, especially in the institutional world. Like that happens all the time. Like that is a good opportunity for private lenders like us. It just so happened that deal was, the risk profile was not there. The LTV was a little too high. The borrower quality was a little bit too low. And so he just like, okay, well, how about this one? Let's talk about this. And so then we talked about another one, and then we talked about another one, and kind of came back. Maybe he thought our terms were a little high and our LTVs were a little conservative, which is true. And I just said, yeah, here's our box. And I just gave him like, if anything pops up in the mid-Atlantic that looks about like this, reach out. That's what we're doing, and plant that seed hopefully for the future. Let me ask you something, because I think the answer will be helpful to the audience. How do you think the transaction differs when a broker's involved?
Yeah, I had on my list to talk about the process of working with brokers, because it differs a little bit, but not all that much. Let me talk about a few communication best practice tips real quick, and then let's talk about our process. Our process, because I think that's important to kind of follow what we do with working with brokers. If not, you're just going to be spinning your wheels, right? Because like, keep in mind, the broker wants to get paid on these transactions, and the brokers they're not lenders. They don't wear lending hats. They wear broker hats. So what's important to you might not be important to them, and they might not know the answers to some of the things that you'd ask as well. So it's important to communicate with them the right way and make sure you're asking them the right questions, and then also getting the borrower involved. And the borrower being involved on broker business is a little unusual, because typically, like, Kiavi is not going to ask, ABC broker to talk to the borrower. Wells Fargo, if it's like a wholesale relationship, they're not going to ask to speak to the borrower. We want to speak to the borrower to make sure that we're on the same page and everybody's on the same page. And we do that very early on in the process. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. But just understand what role the broker's playing. Like, they don't have an economic interest in this thing. At the end of the day, they're getting paid their broker fee for introducing you and helping facilitate the transaction. And then they're out. And that is what it is. And that's okay. So you got to understand what's what. And I will tell you that deals that come from brokers sometimes are a little hairier deals than deals that maybe you're working directly with the borrower, right? Because if you're working directly with the borrower, typically the communication is pretty connected, because you're doing all the communication with them. But if you're working with a broker, sometimes you might ask a question and they might give you the answer that either you want to hear or they think is the right answer.
Right.
So that doesn't work. That's not working. You got to take that in case. And there's also the other side that, like, we did a deal recently, and we uncovered, some small minor things. Like, we were working on the deal and I was like, wow, this is a really, really strong deal. It's a low LTV. It's a higher credit score borrower. I was like, why wouldn't they just, reach out directly? Why'd they go to a broker? But, like, as we were working on the deal, we uncovered that, like, hey, they recently just went through this divorce, and, they didn't have a tenant in this property for that period of time, and they were struggling with costs, like things that we would have uncovered pretty quickly. But because we were going through a broker, we were misled slightly. It was still a fine deal, so we ended up doing it. So, okay. So back to Chris's question of, like, how the process differs. So let's go through what our process is when working with a broker. So typically the broker will call or email us a scenario. I'd like to get on the phone with them as soon as possible and go through our normal spiel, right? We go through our normal spiel with them. And cool, because, like, one of the biggest things that happens is they'll reach out and it'll be like oh, hey, the person's living in this property. It's like, hey, sorry, we only do investment properties. Oh, well, they don't have to live in this property. We could say it's an investment property. It's like, yeah, it doesn't really work like that. But they want to get the deal done. So, and I'm not, they're used to, I'm not saying they're used to doing things in the gray area, but like they're used to structuring it based on what they think the lender wants to see. We just want to know what's going on so we can figure out the best way to structure if it's going to work with us or not. So, okay. So we have a conversation with the broker, go through our normal thing, try to get a good understanding what the borrower is looking to do. Figure out if the exit strategy is realistic. And then what we usually do, or what we do, I should say, is we give them a loan amount quote of what we're comfortable with. So it's like, okay, they're buying it for 150 and need 60 grand in work. They think it's worth 250, whatever it is. It's like, okay, cool. We'll lend you whatever, 160 with 60, get held back, 100,000 gross core loan amount. You're gonna need 60 grand plus costs. We'll do a 150 loan. They're going to need $72,000 cash to close. Is that something they can work with? Cool. Let's figure out if they can work with that. If they verbally say yes, let's keep it moving, right? Let me know. We'll term sheet it. We'll do whatever. So that's usually the first step. They'll come back and say, yeah, they said they can work. They had a few questions, blah, 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 blah. So depending on the situations, sometimes we'll get on the phone with the borrower right then and say, hey, let's just do a quick phone call. I don't want to waste your time, Mr. Broker, or your borrowers. This is definitely a deal we're interested in. I think we can help out. Let's just have a real quick call. We can do it as a 3-way call, right? I don't need to talk to your borrower without you. That's fine. I'm not trying to circumvent you, because a lot of brokers feel like they're going to get circumvented and miss out on their fee, and a shady lender is just going to steal them, which does happen, right? So you got to understand these things so the talking points of the brokers, so you don't tell them, so they don't disappear on you and try to go find another lender. So we try to have a phone call with them, kind of upfront. Now, if the deal's clean and the borrower's like, yeah, we got to close quick, we can, or if the broker says, yeah, they can make that work, we got to move quick, blah, 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 what's the next step? Sometimes I'll just do the term sheet first, right? Because I'll put the term sheet together. I'll say, hey, sign the term sheet, pay the valuation fee, and then part of my process will get on the phone with the borrower after that. Right. Because then they're committed. Then I'll get on the phone and say, and then typically the script is like, hey, this is Jason at Hard Money Bankers. I was talking to, Mario, he's filled me in on what you're trying to do. This is great. He's been a lot of help. It's great that you're working with him type of situation, make the broker feel good. Just had a few quick questions. So, you're buying this at 150. Is that right? Yes. Okay. And you need 60 grand in work. And who's actually doing the work? Have you done some of these projects before? Normally things that you would normally have in your script on the front end, but you're asking them these questions kind of throughout and see what they say. Hey, what are you doing with the property afterwards? Oh, I'm planning to renovate it, then I'm going to live in it. It's like, ooh, okay. So the broker didn't say that. So it's, so then, we determine if that's really the case. Probably can't do the deal if that's the case. But I'll try to ask them, not necessarily trick questions, but I'll try to figure out to make sure that the broker's really telling me the truth. And that's kind of, and then after that call, we try to get the broker to do a lot of the heavy lifting, right? We'll hook them up with our portfolio manager, also known as a processor, Terry, and be like, okay, well, these are the things that we need, Mr. Mario Broker, these are the things that we need. Can you coordinate with Terry? Let's get these things done and we'll get this thing closed. So really the process is, having a conversation with the broker first before the borrower, and then at some point getting the borrower on the phone and kind of verifying a lot of the things that we discussed.
Yeah, another thing that you mentioned that people ask a lot in the mastermind group has to do with broker fees on repeat business. So our position on that is an important one. If a broker brings a borrower our way, we're going to make sure that they get paid in perpetuity, because there's a good chance after communicating with our company during the process on payments, draws, everything else, payoff statement, when they come back for another deal, they might just come to us directly. And so we bring the broker back into the situation and make sure they get paid. It wouldn't be cool, in our opinion, to do anything other than that. And I know that some lenders do that. Some lenders will even say like, yo, thanks for bringing me this. You'll get paid on the first deal. After that, it's our client. So then you won't get paid. And that just does not seem right. We've never approached it that way. But somehow lenders get away with doing that stuff. So yeah, I mean, it does make In my opinion, there are pros and cons, even after closing, of having a broker involved. Like, one is that, yes, you could delegate some tasks to them. Be like, oh, hey, your client bounced a payment. Can you go see what's up? Because we got to get this payment in. Like, yeah, you can do stuff like that, but it really just muddies the waters in a lot of ways. And then you're just getting the broker's opinion or information on what the borrower said. But sometimes they're really helpful too. Maybe the borrower themselves is not that great at communicating, or is they're not on top of whatever's going on, and the broker can assist with that. It's a two-way street, really, when it comes to working with brokers.
Yeah. And I mean, it depends on their personality. Like, I'm looking at an email chain right now from a deal that deal I was just saying that we closed Friday, and today's Monday that we're recording this. And like, there's like 50 emails from this broker. And I'm like, bro, at one point of this, he was really concerned that this deal would close on time because they had to pay off somebody else. And I'm like, bro, like, we're professionals. We'll handle this. Like, let me just deal with the borrower directly, and we'll just get this thing done for you, because like, you're good. Like, we typically put the broker fee on our term sheet, so it's outlined, so the borrower knows what's going on. Typically, it's smart for brokers to get their own fee agreement signed ahead of time. But if they do, this guy didn't, and it wasn't a huge deal. However he wants to do it, but it's like, hey, we'll handle it either way. If the broker just wants to pass it off afterwards, we can do that as well. But we want to stick in their boundaries, and kind of like make them comfortable, because we appreciate the business. We want to continue to do more business with them, but at the same time, we want to be able to control the situation, so we know what's going on, and, we're comfortable with everything. And, there was a deal, a good borrower that we did a loan for. It was a few years ago. This is the last one I remember this for, but it was a few years ago at this point, and it came from a good broker. And the lady called me, and she's like, hey, I did a deal with you. I went through so-and-so broker. You guys were great. I appreciate it. I have another deal, but I don't really want to go through this broker because I don't want to pay the 2 points again. And I was like, hey, honestly, like, unfortunately, like, I won't be able to work with you unless she's involved. Let me call her though and see what's up. And I called the broker, and I was like, hey, listen, so-and-so, called me. She has another deal, but she doesn't necessarily want to go through you and pay the points again. And she was like, yeah, that lady's, pain in the neck. She's been trying to get me to cut my fee. I've been working hard with her. And I was like, why don't we do this? I was like, if it's good for, I was like, a few different things could happen. I can tell her absolutely no. And, you deal with her directly, or we can go back to the same way. You deal with her directly, and maybe we do the deal. Maybe we don't. I can say, hey, unfortunately, I can't work with you at all. Or we do something where, we give you like a half a point or a point, and I'll just handle everything moving forward. And she was like, hey, let's do that. Like, charge a point moving forward, and we'll work with her. And I called the lady, and I was like, hey, listen, you don't have to go through this broker. You go through me. But we're going to be 4 points on every deal. And she was like, well, you charge 3, and the broker, I was like, yeah, that's just what we're comfortable doing on this one. It didn't end up working. So we lost out on the deal. But I'd much rather lose out on one deal or 2 deals from a borrower than lose out on a good broker relationship. And, keep in mind, even if the broker has never sent you a deal before, they might go around town and badmouth you. And it's not something you want. Like, they brought you the deal. You have to do what you got to do to make it work, to keep all parties happy. So long story short, broker business is good business. Typically 10 to 20% of all of our loans come from brokers. Pretty much all of the commercial loans that come to us, not all of them, but a lot of them, 75% of them probably come from a broker. 25% on the residential side. And we have some really good broker relationships. And yeah, I will say that we're a little bit more conservative on some of those, because I feel like being involved a little bit, I'm getting a lot of the story, but I might not be getting every little bit of it. So we want to make sure we're conservative. And following up what Chris said earlier, we do have one broker that if the borrower misses payments, we typically just reach out to them and they help handle it. So that's benefit as well.
One final tip on working with brokers is that, just like with borrowers, it's important to go in confidently with your loan quotes, and similar kind of scripting, right? Because brokers, they're in the business of shopping around for lenders and loans, right? And so they're looking for cheap stuff. They're looking for high leverage. It's also kind of funny that they always start with like, yeah, they're looking for the highest loan you can do. It's like, are they really though? Anyway, that aside, it's important to quote confidently. And when they say stuff, and they will, like, whoa, that's really high on the rate. Anything you can do on that and the points, or like you're only doing 50 loan to value on commercial properties, like, ouch, like what am I supposed to do with that? The same kind of scripting. Just stick to your guns, go in confidently and say, look, like that's our box. If anything pops up, we lend our own funds, we move quickly, we got an easy due diligence process. That's what we're here for. Something will pop up, right? At some point in time, they're going to need to place something creative, quick, private, like the stuff we do, and they'll come back. Even if their first reaction was like, oh, your rate's high and your LTV's low and I can get much better than that. It's like, okay, no problem. Do what you got to do. We'll be here if you need us. So hopefully you guys can capitalize on some of this broker business that is increasing with the institutional capital markets being a little shaky, a little uncertain. Real estate market could be softening in a lot of areas, so we expect that to continue. We appreciate you guys checking out the Private Lenders Podcast. And until next time, we'll see everyone inside hardmoneymastermind.com.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast. Please note that the opinions stated by all the speakers on this show are only opinions and not intended for legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, accounting, and financial professionals. If you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 free community for new and experienced private and hard money lenders.